Thank you very much, Dave. What I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about Cenex, who we are, then touch upon some of the work we've been doing, in particular looking at how electric vehicles are effectively batteries on wheels. How can we use them for short-term storage? And how do we make money out of it? How do we make that into a commercially viable proposition that works for the vehicle owner and for the building or district or city that that vehicle is connected to? And then some of the challenges going forward. Cenex, Centre of Excellence, we are an independent not-for-profit organisation that specialises in helping organisations utilise low-carbon vehicles. So before I move on to the next slide, how many of you within your fleets have a low-carbon vehicle? An electric vehicle, a hydrogen vehicle? Fantastic, lots of hands going up. How many of you have them at home, actually own an electric vehicle that you drive around yourself? One or two? So they are starting to happen. I think a few years ago, people would say, oh, well, it might happen. There's not many electric vehicles around. When I asked Dave for one about 5 years ago, he said, well, if you can find one that will do what you want it to do, you can have it. Yeah. But at that point, they weren't there. But now they really are starting to happen. One of the things that we do is help fleets, in particular, understand how electric, hydrogen, gas vehicles can work operationally, based on real-world duty cycles, can work environmentally, so understanding both tank-to-wheel and well-to-wheel emissions, so you're really understanding what carbon and, most importantly now, what air quality benefits you're getting from using those vehicles, and, probably the most important thing, how that can work financially, how they can operate within your fleets and save you money. Just tied up a little bit of work for a local authority near where I live. They'll have a payback in 1.1 years. They'll save £4,000 by converting one old diesel van to an electric van. So they're going to do it not for environmental purposes. It makes commercial sense for them to do that. But it's only by thinking about that in terms of whole life costing and understanding the real operational conditions that you can make those rational decisions. They're some of the people we've worked alongside, helping them make rational decisions, helping those business cases and as independent experts, we're not trying to study one particular piece of technology, we're trying to make life easier for you. One thing we've noticed happening is that the smart city is where three things are hitting each other. New forms of mobility, low carbon mobility, both electric vehicles, smarter forms of transport, as well as energy systems. How do you fuel your vehicle? Well, it's not going to be petrol or diesel. It's going to be electricity, biomethane, gas, hydrogen. So it's a different way of thinking about fueling vehicles. And those are totally dependent on different systems and different ways of operating. And the glue in the middle that's holding that together is your smart data, your intelligent systems. And getting them to operate as a system that makes rational choices operationally, environmentally, and financially is a challenge we face. Any idea what those people are sitting there waiting for? What they're queuing for? Any suggestions? Yeah, absolutely, man. They're absolutely right. They're sat outside a car showroom overnight to queue up to buy a car. A car that they've only ever seen a picture of. They might have seen a video of. No one, other than Elon Musk, the owner of the company, has driven one. There's been no test reviews done for it. And they may have to wait 2 years for it. In fact, 373,000 people paid a deposit for a car that they haven't driven. I think Elon Musk might have known something about what's happening in terms of the exchange rate when he set the thing as £1,000 equals $1,000, so maybe he was ahead of the curve. And that's a car they're queuing up to buy. Will cost about $30,000, I'm not even quite sure of the price, a range of 200 to 300 miles, full electric vehicle. And it's nice, and it's fun, and it's very, very quick. So I think this has set a challenge to the energy industry, people like you and over there, who suddenly realised, well, we thought electric cars were going to happen, we're not quite sure when, but then Volkswagen say, well, by 2025, at least a quarter of our new car sales will be fully electric. That's a lot of vehicles, and that's up to 3 million vehicles, all plugged in, probably all in cities, potentially all plugging in at 4:30. when energy systems under its most strain, when energy is most expensive. So a potential real challenge to the energy system. So we've been doing a bit of work with some funding from Innovate UK, with some support from the European Commission, from Interreg and from the Climate Knowledge Innovation Community to understand what that means and understand how much capacity is available. So there's quite a lot there, assuming the vehicles aren't completely empty all the time. We think that in the city, most vehicles will probably have at least 40% capacity in them. So how do you use that capacity to support the grid, to support your economic position? Because you've bought an expensive vehicle, so how do you use that energy that's stored within your battery? So when you plug in at 4:30, why not discharge and charge up again at midnight? So using that for distributed storage. So there's quite a lot of power available, but getting the systems to work around that. One of the things we've noticed is that this has been driven by the consumer. Consumers who put PV on their house are now more likely to buy electric cars. People who sell electric cars are now starting to sell photovoltaics. Tesla have just merged with Solar City, a major PV seller in the States, and people start to get involved and they feel more independent. But what that requires is a couple of clever things. On the left, there's a bidirectional inverter, the first one installed in the UK that takes power in and out of the vehicle. Nissan are very supportive of this technology. That's at Aston University and the project that we're working with them on. So they're putting energy in at night from their district energy scheme, using biofuels from waste materials. Not much of a market for energy at night, storing it in vehicles during the day and putting it back when energy is expensive. The Dutch are always a bit clever, always a bit smarter. So there you have a PV on the roof of a houseboat with Hugo, one of our Dutch partners there. Next to that is a small boat, which is his electric boat, with its storage in there. So when the sun is shining, he runs his houseboat, saves some in his boat, runs his boat off of it, and powers his house at night. A significant increase in energy autonomy by linking the technologies together. And he has a mobility system as well. Yeah, pretty obvious stuff. You can take some of that reduced peak demand and smooth out solar. It works equally well for wind, and in particular, if you think about some of the community energy programs with wind, that's generally generating at night. So again, it's how you integrate that and help smooth the load by that distributed storage in electric vehicles. As talked about earlier, some clever technologies, a virtual power plant, and linking all those different technologies together into one system. So this is the work we've been doing, the ebbs and flows. So linking those buildings, getting that virtual power plant to work, and probably most importantly, making the energy market work, how you work in the brokerage, how you work in the existing energy markets to make money out of this. No one's going to invest in the technology if there isn't an economic case. So, about making sure that the software is there, taking the data, simulating the results, and working on the output cost. So what we've been doing is working on three main scenarios. One, looking at building peak shaving, so managing the building, then looking at the same with the demand side tariff, so it's a lot more expensive to buy electricity at 4:30 than in the morning, in the afternoon than it is at 4:30 in the morning, possibly up to 20 times more expensive. So how do you make financial benefits from that? And then looking at the short-term operating reserve, the store market. Again, something that the energy companies are playing in. So how can we make that work at a building level, at a district level, and at a city scale? So we've now been doing the modelling. We've got some financial results which we can share with you, so you can actually see what difference it's making. In terms of building demand reduction, you can see the saving there. The building is a negative. So the building doesn't benefit, but the consumer does, the driver does. Not a vast amount per annum, but it is starting to, well, actually, by allowing my vehicle to be used, makes a benefit. However, if that's a fleet vehicle, if that's Royal Mail, the university, the city council, they're starting to get an extra return from their fleet vehicles that are plugging into their buildings when they come back. More likely, they're using half-hourly billing, paying it in terms of time of use tariff. There you can start to see quite a bigger return, a return for the building and a return for the driver. Whether that return is enough for the driver to allow someone to start playing with your batteries in your expensive car is another matter. We think that probably comes down to behavioural opportunities. So if I get a preferential parking point right outside the station, right outside the airport, so I'm now getting a preferential treatment, then maybe I will allow my batteries to be used. But I want to make sure that when I come back to my vehicle, it's fully charged. Otherwise, I'm going to have a problem. So we're developing some apps with some other partners in the Midlands, with funding from Innovate UK, to help interact that consumer experience so the driver is always confident that when they return to their vehicle, it will be fully charged. And they get the financial benefit and the perks of a better parking position. It also works with store. This is at scale now. We're looking at thousands of vehicles, and you can see at different time of days, actually there is a financial benefit for having this technology working. We think it'll work first in terms of shifting demand, secondly in terms of fleets, and then as a mass consumer product as more of us are getting electric vehicles. If we don't do this, it will cause severe problems to the grid as the number of vehicles increase dramatically. If we do integrate it with renewables, there are additional benefits as well. So, what next? Probably the most important thing is that we finalise the research on the batteries and battery degradation so that there's confidence and insured benefits to the battery. What you don't want to do is damage your expensive assets, so how do you manage it and ensure that? And that work is carried on with the Warwick Manufacturing Group at Warwick University. One of the key opportunities for the UK is reducing the technology, maybe an opportunity for Siemens. Currently the vehicle to grid unit, the one we showed there, £30,000. It's not cost effective. That needs to come down to at the £1,000 mark. There are a number of people working on that, but bringing that technology down is quite simple. It's an inverter, quite common within the renewables industry, so developing and bringing that hardware down. And then working to develop the virtual power plant and the trading and financial benefits. But this stuff is happening now. Electric vehicles and low-carbon vehicles are increasing dramatically. So it's how we bring the business case to drive through the technology change and to make all of our lives better and more fun. Thank you very much. That's my contact details, and Becky, who actually does all the work rather than me. So I thought, if you want to find out exactly how it works, speak to Becky. If you want to get some more general ideas, speak to me, and we have a stand outside. And thank you.